I'll speak, really dovetailing with what Bob has said, speak briefly about political engagement at Duke, and some of my own efforts briefly about getting Duke students to the polls. And I think that if there are lessons to be learned about the last 5 years, let's say, of Duke students' political engagement. And I think in many respects the topics and the complexities are kind of mirrored on campus. I would ask one question first, which is I think that there is, you'd ask this, Eric, but I think there's a kind of, is there empirical proof that political engagement has declined? Just real briefly, in 2008, and many of you know this, I would say we had something like a student and a youth movement in the state of North Carolina, and many of you know this, but in bringing, this is partisan. I think there's also, let me just say one thing. I think there's a kind of a bias we have as educators, an anxiety. This goes to the culture part of the problem. There was a lot of Duke student activity. In fact, the lead organizer for the Obama campaign was one of my former students, who was a Duke student, reaching out to Duke students left and right, and a whopping total of 11% of Duke students voted in the primary. It was pathetic. And then there were these arguments about what is wrong with the Duke student? Why are they so depoliticized? So in many ways, everything you said, the kind of declension story you're suggesting, I would have been very sympathetic to that at that moment. You know, what is wrong with us as educators where only 11% would vote? 83% of Duke students overall voted. And the numbers of Duke students who registered locally went from 700 to 4,000. So 80% of the Duke students, undergraduates, voted. That's pretty extraordinary, who were here. Back in the 60s, when polling sites were arranged and precinct maps were last redrawn, Duke students who were very involved in the civil rights movement, some of the same rabble-rousers, pissed off local Democratic and Republican leaders in Durham, and they did not want a Duke precinct. So what we have in Duke are two precincts, both off campus. The majority of Central Campus is a precinct polling at the Crest Recreation Center, which is behind the VA. It's virtually impossible to find or get to unless you know that neighborhood. It's sort of tucked away. And so in fact, there was by design a desire to discourage Duke students from voting. That's why we have the polling system we have. So in the off-year election, we don't have an early site, and the numbers are way down. Students have to go off campus. Now you might think we could create the declension story that they should know better. I don't think it's that. I think that's kind of misses the point. Access really matters.
Where's the other side?
Watts Elementary, which is a little bit easier. That's a block off campus. It's still off campus. A bunch of students showed up at the old training room, wanting to vote or get off. What worked? 400 Duke students voted. It doesn't sound like very much, except in the last off-year election, about 40 voted. So 400 is pretty good. We actually did pretty well in Durham County. Turnout dropped in every Democratic, I'm speaking as a partisan here, it's a ferocious Democrat, I'm a precinct leader. Okay? If not for Durham County's turnout, which was still very good, David Price would probably have lost his seat. It would have been a sweeper. He got killed in Wake County. He lost Wake County by 20,000 votes. We still turned out, we almost turned out 50% of the electorate in an off-year election. That's really damn good. It was much, much higher than the 06. 10 times as many Duke students voted as in 06. And the reason that happened was not because of the stupid little bus, which was helpful, but because there were Duke students in front of the bus stop all day long saying, rides to the polls here, people like Ben Bergman, like Elena, talking, phoning, doing the kind of movement organizing that actually gets people to vote. That's the reason, that's the cultural part. The other set of example I would say is, my other experience with this, is that there have been real limits on political engagement that is less about voting. And the Duke administration has been fairly supportive. Although, I should say, in the 08 election, I remember a explicit email saying, forbidding us from using our email accounts to doing anything political. Sorry.
Because of that.
I emailed thousands of people. It's just the way it was. I sent out lots of email blasts with my email at duke.edu, and I shouldn't have done that. But the fact of the matter is, one way of responding to this is to say, screw it, do your political organizing. Push it. Are they going to actually censor me and take away my email account as a Duke educator? Because I happen to respond that way. So another example is during the 2005 and 4, during the Mount
protest. Duke students were very involved with that. And there was farm laborers were organizing. There was a great rally and protest march on campus. They went into the small places where Mont pickles were sold and basically shut the stores down and got those removed. Now, pickles, not a big deal. Well, except it led to the first union contract for guest workers in the country.